Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Yeah.
So we were rambling on about velocipedes and ordinances
and things that got
whatever.
passed. And yeah.
Actually, I'm going to throw one last little reference to the city council meeting of the things other than the late order that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Which was that there was an order. I think it's well intentioned. It might even be a good idea to sort of put a prominent tree in the front of City Hall.
Oh yeah. What was that about?
I think it's because right now
There was a tree taken away there?
politically no, there wasn't, but
I thought there was in some corner.
there's politically, everybody's talking about the tree canopy
Yeah.
and the loss of canopy, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think people sort of want to capitalize on the symbolism of doing something kind of prominent in front of City Hall.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the incentive for wanting to put a kind of, a real serious tree in front of City Hall.
Okay.
But, again, back to the issue of institutional memory.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think, because I was there at the time when Kathy Bourne was on city council, councilor and vice mayor for a time. And she was an architect, so she really thought about building and what they should look like.
Space, yeah.
And she made the point that the way City Hall looked at the time, this was in the late 1990s, I believe. There was ivy was growing over the front of the building.
Perimeter hedge.
I refer to them as spruce trees, but they were actually yews that had sort of grown to tree size.
Oh, you have a little. Is that the photo right there?
Well, there's a photo. Actually, let's actually take a look at that here.
Yeah.
Just to sort of show. It's a very small little photo there.
Yeah, it's right here.
But if you look at that, the prominent picture, probably from the late 1800s and early 1900s of City Hall.
So there's shrubs here or something.
Right. So there was a low hedge.
Right.
But that even the hedge came somewhat later.
Yeah.
In the early pictures, there was no hedge.
But where's this tree though?
That was on
the street.
That's out at the street level, right?
Okay.
But the thing is that I think it was very much intentional to actually have the building itself be a statement, right? Architecturally and otherwise, a real prominent presence on the avenue. So what had happened over time is these yews had grown up on either side of the main entryway. It was an interesting thing because whenever you'd walk into City Hall, you'd hear these birds like screaming at you because they were filling up the yews. But the truth is that it was actually covering up some of the windows. And it was becoming a maintenance issue.
I must have remembered that. I was here.
But I think it was Kathy Bourne, and maybe Kathy Bourne together with Charlie Sullivan from the Historical Commission actually recommended that the building, the look of the building be restored to where it was when it was originally laid out. And that meant taking down those trees and actually removal of the hedge, the perimeter hedge around the front of City Hall.
Did it always have those two levels though?
As far as I know, it was kind of like a terrace front. And something that I did not anticipate, but it happened very quickly after they removed the hedge, is that the front of City Hall became this magnet where people, especially in the summertime, would gather on the grass in the front of City Hall.
Great place.
And in the summertime especially, people would be there bare-shirted and sunning themselves on the front of City Hall. So it's sort of like the Central Square beach.
Is that what led to one of the policy orders about games? Did that ever come to fruition?
Actually, Council Mallon wanted to have like puppies in front of City Hall.
But also, wasn't there supposed to be games or some equipment? Did that ever happen?
It had, as far as I know, it hasn't happened.
Okay.
But the thing is that, so I think it would be kind of nice to have a tree, but on the other hand, there are other interests, Would that, when they do the big dance party, would having a tree right in the middle of it kind of be a hindrance to that? Or not?
They'd be just climbing up the tree.
People be climbing up, probably ripping branches off the tree.
That's once a year. I mean, Councillor Devereaux pointed out that by the time that tree is really grown, they're going to welcome the shade because it's going to be so hot most of the time. So I thought that was an interesting comment.
but it's also sort of a way of justifying it too.
Well,
but in any case, whether it happens there or someplace else, and some of the councillors actually did refer to maybe it could be someplace else, but I think it's not a bad idea to sort of make a statement by planting a magnificent tree in a very public place and sort of creating a focal point around it. Yeah. Honestly, having like, the Charter Oak in Connecticut or, the Washington Elm was one of the world's most famous trees in the perimeter of the Common in Harvard Square. Having a tree as a focal point is actually kind of part of the city's history.
But when
I
you
actually
say
own several pieces of the Washington elm.
wow, but when you say focal point, I think of something in the center of something, and that really couldn't be there.
Right. So the thing
So it
is,
would either one side or the other, and then it's
well, if you're a city council,
Maybe
you think
matching
of City
trees.
Hall as the center of the universe.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true.
yeah, but it would take a okay. I think a tree would be nice. I just
so
don't
do
know
I.
where.
So do I. Yeah.
Sort of to the sides, that's all. Probably
so
to
there
the
may be a way
side
to
of
do that.
Bigelow versus.
Actually, on the
you know.
Bigelow side, there is like a mulberry tree that's.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think it's the best specimen tree.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe with something that grows to be 100 feet tall would be a lot
I just
more interesting.
think that would be less hindrance to people gathering if it was on that side of the
Right,
city.
but I actually respect Kathy Bourne's perspective, and again, we'd have to talk to Kathy to really
Yeah.
get the word on this. But
Yeah.
the thing is, there is something about allowing the architecture of a building to be the statement too, and putting
it's
a tree in
beautiful
front of it
statement.
is not
Yeah.
always.
Well, obviously, it's not going
a
to be in
plus.
front of it, Robert. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a moot
Well,
point.
we'll say. Anyway, so that was
All
one
right.
thing that was
Yes.
sort of in the queue.
Yeah, there weren't that many orders. It was just 3.
There wasn't that many orders,
Yeah, and then a late
some
one.
of them were pretty
Well,
non-controversial.
order 3, I don't know what that was. You don't have it on here. I guess it didn't concern you that much. You remember what that one was?
Not really.
Okay. All right.
It was only 4, and then what happened
Right,
was, and
right.
normally I go up to the City Hall for this, but I stayed home last night,
Smart.
and so I was sort of watching on the TV, and then they started making
Watch on the
reference.
computer. You don't
Well,
have
excuse
cable.
me, that's right. I was
yeah.
watching on the computer, but they were sort of making reference to the late order, and I said, "What's that? What's that?" Normally I get a copy of them up there, but I was able to download a copy of
But
it.
it had it on the I'd had it on the computer. You
Yeah,
looked at the
and that's how I
agenda.
got it. That's
oh, okay.
right.
All right.
So the thing is so there was this order, which is kind of an interesting matter.
Yeah.
And I'll just sort of say kind of on the
It's
quick
right, you
here
gave it to
what
me.
it says here.
You have it there?
But it's the order actually calls upon what basically the background was is that the governor, and not just the governor, but the governor's staff. I think I have a feeling some of the people who were involved in drafting this.
So it came from the governor's office?
It's
Oh,
so
that's
it's they
interesting.
propose a bill H.4075,
Right.
an act to promote housing choices.
Right.
Okay. Now the background, and again, we can get into some of the details of this insofar as I understand them, but the background really is that if you look at a lot of suburban communities, they were very resistant to allowing things like multifamily homes, any kind of density. Apartment buildings are sort of right out sometimes. They insist on like a 1/4 acre per house, and really zoning that basically requires so much space that it's just never going to be possible to have any level of the kind of housing production that's necessary to support the population as it is and as it is growing. Right. So the state passed Chapter 40B some years ago, which is what they call SNOP zoning legislation, that gives a housing developer of quote affordable housing end quote the capacity to file for a comprehensive permit and bypass a lot of local zoning restrictions if they're producing a particular type of housing. So there's a little bit of a precedent of the state intervening to try and kind of go over the top of local resistance to housing development. So, I always couch everything in terms of that as a background.
Yeah.
So now this is something different, and I'm a little unclear where this
Who
is going to go.
introduced this bill, do you know?
It came from the governor.
Oh, but it's
Yeah.
a House bill, but who sponsored it then?
Probably a bunch of people, but it was, but it came
Act to
out.
promote housing choices. Okay, but
Right. But the governor can introduce legislation to.
okay, but I'm just
legislation.
curious they
To the
still had to have
sponsors,
House
yeah.
sponsors, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a nice list of the sponsors.
Probably
So,
some,
again, not to get into all the details of the whole bill, though you can get it.
It's highlighted in the agenda.
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
go to
but
it. Yeah.
there it is. There's the whole House bill.
Yeah.
With a message
Oh,
from
that's the whole House bill.
together with
Okay,
the
that's
message
not-
from the governor.
Oh, wow.
And it it makes a lot of definitions about things like transfer of development
Mm-hmm.
rights, apartment districts and whatever. I'm probably getting some of the terminology wrong. There's references to accessory dwelling units, sort of like we passed with the Barrett petition, allows the use of some.
So it's more comprehensive
accessory
than
units.
just saying zoning require just a simple majority.
Right, but the reason why it's making all these references, these particular ones, is so they can make clear what the big part of this is really about. So zoning law in Massachusetts, and this is not true for all states in the area, requires a 2/3 majority vote, either of your local town meeting or your
So
city
regardless of
council
your
or
form
whatever.
of government, your town, you have to have
it's a
2/3.
2/3.
Wow.
Now, I wasn't around when that was established, and nor do I
Huh.
know when it was established, except that I know zoning legislation dates back to the 1920s. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going to guess here now and say that the reason for the 2/3 requirement is that there was a belief, and maybe it's a correct belief, that property rights are kind of akin to constitutional rights, and that simple majority votes
Would negate that.
to negate
Yeah.
property rights or constitutional rights, maybe it's not the correct standard.
Yeah.
So, for whether it was good or bad, it was established, at least in Massachusetts, that you need a 2/3 vote. Not only that, but, though it doesn't get invoked very often, if there's a zoning proposal, like somebody wants to change the zoning in Cambridge, and it requires a 2/3 vote, if 20% of the ownership of the affected area, right, and the city clerk has to, and the public works department have to figure it out to make sure that threshold's been reached, if more than 20% say we don't like this, that forces an even higher requirement of a 3/4 majority.
Is that just in Cambridge?
No, that's state law.
Oh, okay. So right now you need 2/3, but it
So-
could go
so
to
tip-
3/4.
So typically, to pass zoning in Cambridge, you need 6 out of 9 city councilors to support it.
What would be 3/4 though when you only
Then
have
it,
9?
then it bumps it to 7.
Oh, 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the truth is, and this is the reason why I'm not so sure that I agree with this, is that pretty much every zoning proposal that has come back through in recent memory that really was worth its weight at all didn't have a hard time reaching not only 6 but 7 or 8 or even 9 votes. All right, because people kind of would work it out.
Right.
I'm a little concerned about
To
having
lower that threshold. And
proposals
then,
where say, do you think we can squeeze out 5 votes to push something
especially
through?
with the way things sometimes
Right.
with,
Now let's be clear though.
Yeah.
This is not a blanket change to a 50% requirement rather than a 2/3 requirement all across the board. It's only specific to particular housing-related zoning changes.
Okay.
All right. So it wouldn't apply for everything. So there would have to be a determination made whether a particular zoning proposal
Would come
fits into
under
the
this.
category where this lower threshold would be met.
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, I think it's like things. It might actually even be things like the affordable housing overlay, but I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Because the thing
Well,
is,
that
if
makes
it involves
sense,
relaxation of setback requirements
Yeah.
or height standards or whatever for the purposes of promoting affordable housing, right?
Seems to me that's what's behind it a little bit, don't
I
you
think it is.
Yeah.
But but there's some oddities about this, things that are actually causing me a certain amount of concern.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you want to change the zoning, if it requires 2/3 vote, it's either way. So if you say, we got 2/3 of the council are in support of upzoning something, and then maybe 20 years later, 2/3 of the council decides we want to downzone something, you can go up or down. You can change the zoning one way or the other way, but either way, it takes the same 2/3 majority.
Okay.
The weird thing about this is they say it takes a 50% majority to go one way, but if you said, wait a second, we're having second thoughts, we think that maybe having that level of density here is not what people want,
Yeah.
then it'll take a 2/3 majority to change it back.
That's what it says there?
That's part of the
So-
state of the
Well, that's
proposal of the law.
confusing. Yeah.
I just think it should be the same standard
Exactly.
regardless.
Right.
I also have some concern that if you lower the threshold to just a flat out 50% threshold, then in fact that becomes, I think, almost automatically a major criteria in deciding who should be elected or not in local town
Oh,
councils.
well, that's for sure.
It'll become because they say, well, you better not vote for so and so because
That's
they're going
gonna
to
be
vote
the
this way
deciding
here,
vote.
and all it takes
Yeah.
is 50%. So we
Yeah.
have to really, really do this. So it politicizes things even more so than it is today.
Right.
So I have some concerns
Yeah.
about that.
Right.
Right.
Whereas the other one, you need more compromise.
And the other thing I'd say about that is that if the intention here is to force some of our suburban friends to permit more liberalized zoning for greater density or set aside areas for apartment buildings, which I think would be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
If that's the intention, but the problem is that they're very resistant. There's a pretty darn good likelihood that the majority of people in those towns are going to still want to be restrictive.
Right, so it doesn't matter if it's 50%,
Right.
they still get the,
So if the places where you really say you want to see this housing development happen are this suburban town, this suburban town, that suburban town, there's a darn good chance that they're all pretty much going to uniformly say no, 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 no with majority votes. And the only people who would then take advantage of this would be places like Cambridge and Somerville.
Yeah. Well,
So I have some concerns because I think Cambridge is doing plenty.
I do too.
And the notion that somehow we're the bad guys that need to be sort of brought, wrestled to the ground to get us to do the right thing to produce housing of a certain type kind of flies in the face of what we're already doing. So I'm a little unclear about this legislation. The builders want it because it gives them opportunities to build. The subsidized housing advocates apparently are for it because they would be giving an advantage to subsidized housing production as well. So you sort of have two different camps all sort of joining forces in support of it, But I'm a little concerned about how this may play out politically. So anyway, that legislation is for the legislature, but they have not acted on it
because it didn't come out of committee, I guess, at the end of the session.
Right. So I don't know what its future really is.
Yeah.
I could certainly understand.
Oh wait, they're still hoping to pass this bill before year's end, so they must be in session. Year's end is in a couple weeks.
Actually, the state legislature, I think. They can do that. They can certainly do that. There are some unanswered questions for me personally about this, and I would love to see more housing growth in some of the near suburbs. But my concern is that you won't get it, and all you'll do is you'll basically just lower the bar for Cambridge.
Let me ask you, who's a member of the Massachusetts Municipal Association? Is that just administrative people? Because you said it represents, they're all supportive, and it's all 351 cities, but who are those? Those aren't the councilors, those aren't the...
No, I mean, the cities themselves are the...
It's the city government.
Yeah, they're the ones who pay a membership fee to be part of that.
All right,
so anyway, I think this needs a little more discussion and debate. So Denise Simmons introduced an order saying let's support this.
Right, and then immediately did a charter right.
She exercised her charter right on her own late order. Right. Which is honestly somebody should have exercised the charter right anyway because
it came in very late.
This is not a small thing.
No, it isn't. No.
To say we're 100% on board behind this.
Right, that's a whole different thing.
Because you're fundamentally zoning is kind of a big thing,
it is.
Whether it should or shouldn't be, but it is.
It's affecting your role as a counselor and your whatever.
And I have some concerns personally that this is also being done part and parcel with other efforts that are now underfoot, like this affordable housing overlay, to basically lower the bar. Right. So to make it easier to pass what they want to push through regardless, and to minimize debate. Right. So if you put this in as a late order, and when nobody even knew about it, nobody had a chance to speak to it, that would have not been viewed as transparency.
Well, if she hadn't charter, somebody else would have.
So somebody, I think, would have.
Actually,
so it'll come back, I think, at next week's meeting.
Now, you know what Policy Order 3 was? Because that actually was the airplane noise reduction. What do you know about that? And that was also charter right by Kelly. Do you remember why?
I don't remember exactly why, other than the fact that he had a certain perception about what the right way to do this was and what the right standards were, and he really has thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jan Devereaux was recommending removing certain features to sort of make nice with some of the neighbors. And
because somebody in public comment brought up that other towns were trying to bully or something, so I guess it's generated. I didn't even know about this. So,
I mean, I have to say, as somebody who grew up in Whitestone,
you had
New York,
planes all the time,
where we had
was it LaGuardia?
LaGuardia. Yeah. So the thing is, we had planes flying low.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anybody who used to watch New York Mets games knew that there were times when they're interviewing a player on the field, they have to stop and wait for 30 seconds till the plane went overhead.
That's funny.
Right? So, I know what it is, and you do sort of acclimate to it, but it isn't always the most pleasant thing. And then occasionally a plane crashes, and then it's really not so pleasant, but that's really rare.
Yeah.
So
what is this? I mean,
so what happened was there were some changes at the federal level.
Okay.
I may have this wrong, but I heard it had to do with efficiency, fuel economy, and whatever. Where if you were to have planes take off over the water, let's say because you didn't want to disturb as many people, but that was the least efficient way to do it. It might cost a lot of fuel to get dumped to take off. So ideally you fly into the wind, and if the wind happens to be coming from the west, then you should be taken off into the west, right? But the thing is, so you have certain flight paths which were common. So apparently what settled in was that there was, I think it was maybe with the opening of a particular runway at Logan, there was tended to be a bit of a concentration of a flight path in certain places, including bending over a portion of North Cambridge. So there's this Fair Skies group who was organized with people in Belmont and Cambridge, whatever, and and they're pretty hot about this.
Why? Because it would make the planes fly over those communities?
Well, the thing is, they feel it's going over their communities, and they want it to be dispersed more, so kind of share the burden. Right, because they're concerned about like every 40 seconds a plane comes overhead.
When you say they, you talking about Cambridge people, or
it's Cambridge, and not just Cambridge, but people in some of just west of the western.
But who is fighting us? I mean, one of the commenters.
Well, the thing is that I think everybody who planes would take off or land, and if you're living in Winthrop, you're used to plane noise. If you're ever in South Boston, planes are coming over pretty close by there. So the thing is that if you change the pattern the way planes have to take off and land,
so it's
in such a way
encompassing more area.
Well, or if the wind, for example, if the rule was you have to fly into the wind, and the winds more often than not were always coming from the west, then more often than not you would have to take off into the west,
to the western suburbs,
right?
Okay.
So the question is should the standards be changed so that you take off in different ways to be fairer? So it's something where I think some people are very passionate about this, right? But then there's always the issue. You say, well, if we're people from Cambridge, we don't want the planes coming over here. Why don't they go over Somerville? Then people in Somerville say, well, wait, what happened here? Why are we getting it now, right? That's the issue.
Is it that far, Cambridge and Somerville, that a plane wouldn't encompass both? I think it's more the suburbs.
The way sound travels, it kind of dies off as an inverse square. So if you go directly overhead,
the mathematician talking here.
You get it kind of directly. But if if your plane was off at 45 degrees there, it's actually it could be like half the volume or something. So. So anyway, it's a real concern. People have been going on, especially people around. I mean, I see this come up in the Fresh Pond Residents Alliance listserv periodically. The issue comes up. So it's been around.
I guess there was a meeting in Belmont, which I guess it already happened.
Last night as well.
But
so they're trying to settle that out. I don't really know how it works out. And it is sort of an irony that in fact, if it's energy efficiency and being as green as we can be, but that conflicts with also being
I think the main concern was at night. Waking people up versus they've gotten used to it during the day. It's more
or they're willing to
during the
accept
night.
it.
And it seems to me they could do something about that.
It's true.
Maybe from
but again,
10 o'clock
I
to
don't,
6 or something.
I certainly don't mean to be harsh in any way about it, but some people are super sensitive too.
Yeah.
And they're just not willing to.
Well, in the summer they would be if they don't have air conditioning.
Listen, there are certain types of sounds even around my, sort of quiet little hamlet of mid-Cambridge.
Yeah.
Where if I have a neighbor who's talking out on a balcony late at night, and I can hear every word, it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, but if it doesn't happen all the time, you sort of put up with it.
But if it was only every Friday night when they were having some people
every Friday
over,
night, that would bother me.
That would bother me too, actually. But if it was
once in a while,
if it's a once in a while thing, you go, okay, fine, right?
But
roll
this is
with
every
the punches.
night. This is airplanes every night.
So I think it's the relentlessness of it that can really drive people batty.
Right.
And I can certainly be sympathetic to that. So anyway, so that was one of the other items that was afoot there. I think maybe one thing I was just noticing though, just to get back to ordinances and whatever that occurred to me was that I was looking at the zoning, the table that I maintain of all the pending zoning ones, and the cannabis zoning
Oh.
right? The expiration date is actually December 31st, and unless I'm mistaken,
Hasn't that
that
gone
has
to
not.
a second? No?
I don't believe it was passed to a second reading.
Oh.
And their next meeting is Monday, this coming Monday, the 17th.
You're talking about the city council.
City council.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they have a meeting on Christmas Eve,
No, of course
and it
not.
wouldn't matter. Said the expiration date is New Year's Eve.
Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe they do have a meeting on Christmas Eve.
It's possible.
I
It is
doubt
possible.
it, but
the thing is if I'm not mistaken, they may actually have to let this one expire and then do another round of it. Yeah.
you know what? I didn't
Which I
see
think,
that it was
considering
canceled.
the fact is that there's not that much in the way of recreational marijuana
Yeah.
places opening yet anyway. So maybe it's not that big a deal if they kick the can down the road just one more cycle. But I somehow thought they were going to pass that and get that off the table before the year's end.
I know nothing
And
about it. I don't want to know anything about it. All I know is I
Yep.
see different shops. I'm wondering whether it Blue Smoke Shop is.
I will tell
They're
you,
all
there-
getting geared towards,
There are,
you know.
I know of at least 2 places down in East Cambridge that are
Yeah.
starting out as medical marijuana
Yeah.
dispensaries,
Yeah.
several others, and they're all trying to get their foot in the door
Yeah.
to be able to then open as recreational marijuana
Yeah.
places. Because to be quite honest, because it's potentially very lucrative.
What have you seen? They made $5 million in like
Yeah,
a week
well,
or
I mean,
something. It's
that's
crazy.
yeah. We'll see whether that sustains itself.
I know I'm getting old when
Yeah.
I just say, please.
There is
just-
but I think that that's something that'll be interesting to watch.
And
Is the
vaping? Do you even know what
proliferation.
vaping is?
Listen, even at the ribbon cutting, somebody's vaping marijuana
What is
right while we're
vaping?
doing the ribbon
is it
cutting
like
in the police
distilling the
substation.
fumes or something?
It's like down to
Is it like
oils and stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm getting old. All right. So you
Yeah.
know what? I did not see a cancellation for the 24th meeting.
I think they may have a meeting, but the thing is that passing to second reading, I think you'd still wouldn't.
No, but I'm just saying in general, I
Anyway,
think
we
there might
gotta-
be a meeting.
we
All
gotta
right.
go,
Well, we'll
so
find out.
See you next week.
Bye.